interesting because you call yourself a resilience speaker. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm so glad you call yourself that because I woke up in like a weird funk today. And I was like, I was listening to your podcast episode about all of the astrology and the portal and all of that. I'm like,
Yes.
yep, that tracks. That tracks for sure.
I know. That's how I always feel whenever, my co-host Cindy or we have like an astrologer on says something about what is happening with the planets or with the energy. I'm like, all of a sudden everything makes sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, it's crazy because part of my funk could be that last night I woke up. Well, last night I was putting my toddler to bed and it took an hour and a half to
oh
put
my
her to
gosh.
bed. And she's 3 years old. So I'm like, at this point
Oh,
in my life, this should be figured out. But it's not, it's not. I'm still basically not rocking her to sleep, but I'm laying
yeah.
with her and she's singing songs. And I'm like, you can
Oh,
go to sleep at any point. Like,
yes. Yes.
come on. So then I finally get her to sleep. But when I get her to sleep, it's already like 9:30, 10. And I'm like, but I don't want to
Oh,
go to sleep now. So then I watch some
yeah.
like trash television on
Of course.
TV to wind down.
Yes. What's your trash television of choice?
Okay, I wouldn't call it like super trash television, but right now it's reality TV cooking show. So right now it's
Okay.
Triple Threat
Okay.
with Bobby Flay, and
Okay.
then it's the Great British Bake Off new
Okay.
season, and then I started. I watch a lot of reality television. Now I started the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives because I found out
Okay.
that what's her name's going to be the new Bachelorette. So now I have
Yes.
to make sure I get caught up on that. So now I've finished an episode with that, but I'm in the middle of like 4 different things.
Sometimes you need that time, just like that mindless break, especially with what you do. So I get it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
get
and then
it.
and then so I woke up this morning feeling a little like, oh, does even like, who am I to give advice about this podcast? Do even people care about this podcast? Do you get imposter syndrome too? Like that?
For sure. Yeah, I think it's something it's funny and I've actually had to really work on it and like I'm a confident person, I'm a self-assured person. But I think we all have some aspect on that. And this is why I always like to say that, it's okay to share what you're going through and it's okay to ask for help because I think it normalizes. Like, I would never think that you have imposter syndrome, so hearing it
Really?
from you really makes me feel like, okay, I'm not so alone. And 2 years ago, I started working with an executive coach, because I'm 32. I'm the founder of a company. I'm a CEO. I do a lot of public speaking. I do a lot of philanthropic work. And, every once in a while, you do have that moment where you're like, who am I to be doing this? Why am I doing this? Why
Yeah,
would anybody want to listen to me? Or am I really an expert in
exactly.
this? And sometimes it takes somebody else like shaking you and saying, yes, you are. Like, cut it out. So,
Oh, why do we do that to ourselves? Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for my little rant there, but I do want to start at the very beginning. I want to know, where are you living right now? And also, where did you grow up? Tell me about your childhood and all of the things there. Yeah. Oh. Oh, interesting. So, where did you go first? Did you go the PR agency route? Like, where did your career go?
So my freshman year of college, before like everybody had a blog, and it was a very new thing to have a blog, and
Yeah.
Instagram was just starting, and I started a fashion blog to have a creative outlet called Street Style Chai, and I used to ask people to take photos of them.
Interesting.
And if I liked your outfit, I was like, can I take a photo of you and get a quote? And shockingly, it actually became popular. And that's how I ended up finding out what a publicist was. So I started having brands email me or people email me to work together. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. How do I do what you do?
Before you go any further, does anyone still follow you that followed your blog back then?
Actually, shockingly, yes, they do.
That's
And
amazing.
it's always so surprising when somebody like pops up or I notice that or catch that, because my content, is just so different now and what I talk about.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I like to say that that was like my like first life.
Yeah.
But so I feel like that blog was kind of my first experience working, so to speak, even though it was for myself. I had
Right.
to learn how to start a blog, and then once people actually started reading it, like what do they want to see, what's performing well, what's not performing well, how do I, if a brand wants to pay me for a blog post, like what should I be charging for that? Okay, now what do I have to deliver on, like how does that work? And through that, I ended up getting a lot of connections through the rest of my college journey, and I interned for a boutique PR firm, which I didn't love, and learned that that was not for me. So I did that for a year. And then I ended up, by my sophomore year, I got sucked up into Nike Corporate when they were opening these new store concepts called Nike Training Club, where the first
Yes.
floor was a store and the second floor was a workout studio with free classes, which
Right.
was unheard of at the time. And they had opened one in Lincoln Park, which is where DePaul was. And it was for a very specific demographic that my age group was a part of. And they were getting the exact opposite. They were getting like young moms coming in. And really, it was meant for like 18 to 25. So they ended up hiring me my sophomore year to help essentially like figure out what were they missing. And because that was the target demographic that my blog served. So
Interesting.
yeah, it
I
was a
use the
very cool
app.
experience. Yeah, and now it's an app and it's a mobile, it's more of a mobile experience, but I really credit that team of women at Nike that I worked with when I was, 19, 20, 21 years old. I feel like were very giving of their time. They were very giving, of their experiences, very genuinely supportive. And I think that that helped to shape, my journey that I've been on. So
And what a great
yeah,
job to get so early in your career, too.
yeah, it was just like a very unexpected, life turn. And I think that that taught me just to put myself out there, even if it's uncomfortable, or even if
Yeah.
you have imposter syndrome, because you never know where that will lead. And then by the time my senior year rolled around and they ended up closing this concept store, and I ended up getting a call from someone that I had met through my blog, through my Nike stuff to say I need somebody to come to Sundance Film Festival with me and help manage talent relations for a partnership with Acura, who was a huge sponsor of the festival at the time. So my senior year, I told my professors, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks because I'm going to work Sundance Film Festival. I'm sure they were like, what? And that, there's a lot of imposter syndrome there, but I feel like that started everything for me. So you never know.
Isn't it sad that Sundance is relocating and it's going to be the last year in Park City this come January?
I know. It's very sad. And I loved it so much that my husband and I started going back every single year. We actually got married in Park City.
Really?
And yeah, so I have like such an attachment to it. We'll see where it goes
rest in peace,
next.
Robert Redford, too.
I know.
I was going to say it's bittersweet because my sister-in-law now lives right outside Boulder, Colorado, where Sundance Film Festival is relocating. So in some ways, as sad as it is, I have like a place to stay and then go to the film festival going forward. So I can't be like super sad about it.
No, I'll live vicariously through you on Instagram.
Yeah. Also, speaking of Robert Redford, I mentioned this on Instagram, but I worked with Robert Redford on a movie for a week. This was like 10 years ago when I was in the pre-news, when I was in the film and TV industry. And he was such a nice person. And he left his hair gel in the bathroom. So he was a little scatterbrained, but he was super nice. I picked up his lunch for him. And my colleague reminded me that when he met him, when we were working together, he said, no, call me Bob. So now he always thinks of him as Bob Redford, not Robert Redford, but yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so sweet.
Yeah. A legend lost for sure.
Absolutely.
So after Sundance Film Festival, what happened next?
Yeah. I finished school and like any other, absolutely insane person in their young 20s, when you think you're invincible and you can just do absolutely anything.
Mm-hmm. And you think that your life is going to go one way when it doesn't.
Yes, absolutely. I decided that I was just going to start my own PR firm, and that's exactly what I did. Instead of going in-house at an agency or in-house at a brand, that just really didn't call to me. And I, had networked my butt off, through school and through all of these opportunities to get clients. And that was then became my first life as a celebrity and entertainment publicist, which taught me a lot.
Tell me about that. What was that experience like?
It was probably exactly, as you would expect it. Especially, I know you're in LA and obviously in the TV world, and you know what it's like behind the scenes. I worked with a lot of reality TV stars. It was kind of like the rise of reality television and shows, like The Voice and America's Got Talent. And there was a show that I worked on called Coupled, where on Fox, that they were trying to make like a bachelorette competitor. It only lasted one season. It was very hard to follow if anybody for some reason had ever seen Coupled. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to manage people, how to work with people, how to manage difficult personalities, how to calm people down, which it's like no matter what area of PR in, you are always doing to some effect for someone. A lot about strategy and how to grow someone's personal brand and their image as a public figure, and was very in the thick of it and thought that was what, I was going to do for the rest of my life. And unfortunately, and then I got sick, and that's when things like completely took a turn.
And we'll talk about that. Before we get into that, though, working in entertainment PR, is there anybody that you worked with in particular that our listeners would know?
Probably not anymore. I mean, I worked on one of the very first quote unquote TV shows on Facebook Watch. And it was a show created and produced by John Cena.
Okay.
And he was wonderful. And each episode featured a different guest. So like I got to work with Pamela Anderson and Nene Leakes and like oddly enough, like Steve-O, and it was right when he had rescued that dog. And like that was probably like the most mainstream show that I worked on, but everything else it was a lot of like NBC shows.
Yeah.
That were more contestant based.
Did you ever have to put out fires either for these shows or for the talent in general?
Yeah, thankfully it was never anything career ending or god awful. I feel like I'm in healthcare PR now, which I know we'll talk about later, but and I still have to put out fires, just different fires. But it always was more between whoever the star of something was, and I feel like either the network or the producers, and it was managing that friction between what the talent wanted and what either production wanted. Because once either side gets something in their head, it's very hard to get them to meet in the middle. So,
did you ever watch Entourage?
Yes, I've seen it too many times.
Me too.
Which is like embarrassing.
That series. The publicist in the show, does any of that track?
Yes, I think, and it's funny, I've always loved her character. I think her name's Debbie Mazar is the actress. Because you really do kind of just have to be tough and steamroll people sometimes. And that for me doesn't always come naturally, but I think it goes hand in hand with like the confidence building and the imposter syndrome and knowing what's best, for your client, or sometimes it's protecting your team and knowing what's best for your team and having to be really assertive around that. So yeah, definitely. Or like the wild behind the scenes things that you deal with and just nobody would ever know.
Yeah.
Nobody would ever know.
Going back, you mentioned that what you were in this, and where were you doing entertainment PR? Were you doing it out of Chicago?
So I was based in Chicago. I was doing a lot of work in LA though. In
yeah. Were you flying back and forth then?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine that. So you mentioned that you ended up getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
Was this when you were diagnosed with Lyme disease?
Yes. Yes.
And how did you even realize that you were diagnosed? Can you tell us and our listeners that story?
Yeah. So my husband is from northern Michigan, or is from Michigan. I had never been to Michigan
too.
Oh, yeah. He grew up in East Lansing, but he went to U of M in Ann Arbor. So he's all over the place. But so anyway, went to northern Michigan with his family for the first time. And my family, like, originally is from the East Coast. So my mom was like aware of Lyme disease and the threat of ticks, and had said to me when she found out I was going, make sure you wear a hat, make sure you wear DEET, make sure you wear tall socks. And I did all the things. I spent a week in northern Michigan. I did all the things. And I came home and I had cold and flu-like symptoms. And I went to my GP in Chicago, who said, oh, you have a summer flu. And these symptoms didn't get better. And then I started to get a rash all over my body. I used to call it my spotted leopard rash because I looked like a leopard, but it was my skin just changing color. And I went back. They couldn't figure it out. And it still was just, oh, you've got a really bad summer flu. So this went on for months and months and months and months. And they started testing me for chronic diseases, autoimmune conditions. Nothing ever came back positive. And just going specialist to specialist. And then about a year into this, and I was in my young 20s, I realized I was starting to lose my memory, as if I had like dementia. And I was like, man, something's really wrong. Like, I don't know what's wrong, but something's really wrong. And So that coupled with my thyroid would get bigger and smaller, and I had my thyroid biopsied 3 times. They thought I had thyroid cancer, and they biopsied it 3 times because they were shocked every time that nothing came back. And then
When you say you were
finally,
losing your memory, what kind of things were you forgetting?
it was everything from like things that had happened in my life to day-to-day things, like, you know, if my husband, or who was my husband at the time, my boyfriend, you know, asked me about something or asked me to do something, or if my mom had said, oh, you know, called me and said, can you do this for me? As soon as that conversation was over, it was out of my brain, like no recollection.
And then your mom would
Just
bring it up
nothing.
later and you would say, I don't even remember you bringing that up. And that
Yeah.
is what made you worried.
Yes. Like I have no idea what you're talking about. Or it was like word recall, and it's called word search and name block, where like I would know what your name is, right? And I could not think of it to save my life. Or you lose you'll lose very normal words, right? Like a fork. You used a fork your whole life. You've always known what it's called. And you cannot think to save your life of like what you would call a fork. And you might say like, can I have that thing that I eat with like 3 spikes on it?
Wow.
And yeah, so that when you have something like that happen, it's called neurological Lyme, which means it's in your brain. And you know, it impacts everything. So, yeah, so that coupled with the thyroid stuff, finally I found a specialist that looked at me and was like, have you ever been tested for Lyme disease? And I hadn't. And they tested me for Lyme, and sure enough, that's what I had. And thankfully, this specialist knew enough to send me to like a tick-borne disease specialist. And they kind of then worked to figure out the rest. But from start to finish, it took me 2 years to get a proper diagnosis. And unfortunately,
2 years?
that's on the short end. And most people don't realize that. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's wild, honestly, to be misdiagnosed for that long.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes to show, though, that you have to be your own advocate and say, something's not right. Something's not right.
Yes.
Hey, something's not right.
Yes, absolutely. And you have to be your own best advocate. And when, you know, if you're sick and you feel like you can't be, you need to find somebody, you need to ask for help, you know, and find somebody who can help you, you know, if that's a possibility, to advocate for you in the doctor's office and the specialist's office. And if you know something's going on with your body, you know, you're not crazy. Because I think women, I don't know if you saw, there was a viral clip from 2 women speaking at some big international conference that went viral last week, where the moderator was asking this clinician, she was speaking to about what's been dubbed whining woman syndrome, and how in medical schools they'll tell you, oh, be weary of the WW. And, oh yeah. And so I think as women, it's already, and I heard this a lot over the course of that 2 years. Oh, you're too stressed. Oh, it's anxiety. Oh, you need to rest more. And you know something's wrong, you know, but when you can't fit in a neat little box, that's when sometimes the medical system doesn't have a solution for you. So,
Yes. And for our listeners that don't know, and I'm not even that familiar, can you break down what Lyme disease is?
yeah, so Lyme disease is a vector-borne illness. It is the #1 vector-borne illness in the U.S., which most people don't realize. And it is transmitted via the bite of an infected tick. The bacteria is called Borrelia burgdorferi, and it's a corkscrew shape. It's very similar, actually, to syphilis. And that's why when you are bitten, if you contract the disease, it's actually very hard then to treat it, because that corkscrew shape is able to really bury itself into your tissues, your muscles, your organs, and spread very quickly, you know, throughout your system. So acute symptoms of Lyme are very classic cold and flu-like symptoms. Sometimes you get something called a bullseye rash that looks like a red ring. But they've actually found through many, many peer-reviewed studies at Johns Hopkins and other institutions that bullseye rash only appears about 30 to 50% of the time. They used to think that you had to have that rash to have Lyme disease, and that we've learned, thankfully, through advancements in science, that is inaccurate. And then, unfortunately, if it's not caught early, it becomes chronic Lyme. And that's when you can have neurological issues, you can have Bell's palsy, you can have memory issues like I did, you can be very, very weak. And the symptoms of that, unfortunately, are endless. So,
is Lyme disease common? Because we know that Justin Timberlake was recently diagnosed with Lyme disease. Also, we've seen Bella Hadid be very open about it. How common is Lyme disease?
So there's, the issue, there's many issues with Lyme disease, and I know many other chronic diseases, it's not just Lyme, is that there is a massive lack of surveillance in the US and abroad, right? So it's very hard to actually know how many people are actually suffering with Lyme disease. They say that there's about 500,000 new cases each year in the US. However, Medicaid did a study last year, and they had said that they think currently there's like a minimum of 11 million people living with it in the US. I think that unfortunately so many people are unaware of the fact that their mystery symptoms could be Lyme. I think there's probably a lot of people living with it, and they just don't know, and to no fault of their own. So it sounds like Lyme disease is not curable, that these symptoms continue for potentially your entire life, right? Yeah. So that's what makes it so tricky, is everyone responds differently, to different therapies, to different treatments. And what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. Lyme disease, once it reaches a chronic state, cannot be cured. They use the term remission the same way they do in the cancer community. Because even though your symptoms are under control and you feel okay, it is still in your system, hanging out with you. So there's many, many different treatments for it, but unfortunately, at this point, there is no cure.
What are some of the ongoing symptoms that you experience?
Yeah, so I mean, at my worst, I was bedridden for 2 years, and that's when I really found out that I wasn't alone, because I thought when I was diagnosed, I was told, oh, you have a rare disease. This is rare. And then once I started researching it, I found out about the nonprofits and the communities. I was like, oh, wow, actually, this isn't that rare at all. That's a misconception. So yeah, at my worst, like, I was bedridden. I needed help getting out of bed to go to the bathroom. I mean, that's how severe it was. And thankfully now, 8 years later.
Because, sorry to cut you off.
No.
Were you bedridden and it made it hard to go to the bathroom because you were so fatigued, or was it because your body was sore?
All of the above.
All of the above.
I had horrible chronic fatigue. I had horrible muscle and joint pain. And all of that together, I mean, it's crushing. It just crushes your body. So you're just so weak. It's hard to walk across the room, unfortunately. Now, I still deal with, I have permanent neurological damage, so I still have memory issues. Not as bad as they were, but still have memory issues. And, I still get that chronic fatigue every once in a while. It's not crushing like it was, but I have to be very careful and have good boundaries about my schedule and what I say yes to and what I say no to. because when I overdo it is when my symptoms will really flare, even though I like to say, thankfully, I'm mostly well now.
How can somebody support someone that's going through Lyme disease?
I think one of the biggest things is, and what I experience and what I hear from the community is there's just such a lack of understanding of what you are actually going through. And I think it's because so many tick-borne disease and Lyme disease patients and Bella Hadid and like Justin Timberlake are the perfect examples, right? They're so beautiful and they're so handsome. They don't look like there's anything wrong. So people will judge them and say, oh, well, you look fine, but you look fine, but you don't look sick. How bad could it really be? So I think just understanding that sometimes how you look on the outside is not representative of what's happening on the inside. And I think understanding that sometimes it's not a choice. If your friend or if your loved one has to say, oh no, I can't go out for dinner this night, or I'm so sorry, I have to cancel on this. I'm just not up for it. It's really not their choice. And they don't want to have to do that. It crushes them too. And just offering to be supportive and there for them, in that way.
I think that's why it's so important when you see those like Bella Hadid who peel back the curtain. I think just recently posted some photos of her crouched in a corner or hooked up to IV and saying, sorry, I've been MIA recently. It allows people to say, oh, whoa, that's a lot more than what I thought was happening with you,
Yes. And Lyme disease is unique because one day you can feel great. You can feel completely fine and you can wake up the next day and not be able to get out of bed. And it's not your choice. It's the disease's choice. And when Bella Hadid posted those photos, it was just yesterday, so September 17th.
It was yesterday, okay.
It was like, gave me goosebumps. I mean, it just was chilling because I think so many people in the community have been there, whether they've done the treatments that she's done, whether they've done something else. And I just actually had the opportunity to work on a Lyme disease related fashion show at New York Fashion Week. And Yolanda Hadid was actually supposed to be involved in it. And 4 or 5 days before the show, sent an email and just said, I'm so sorry. I'm dealing with a family situation and I can't be there. And then, Bella Hadid posted those photos and it was just a moment of like, you never know what's happening in somebody's private life. You never know what they're really dealing with. And just very like grounding. So.
Now, Justin Timberlake had announced that he had it while he was performing on tour, like a global tour.
Yes.
Is it wild to think how he managed to do that and for how many weeks or months?
Yes. My first thought was, number one, that it wasn't surprising when he announced it, because looking back on a lot of his videos that people had been posting and saying, what's going on here? I was like, oh, it makes perfect sense because the chronic fatigue you're dealing with is crushing. The muscle pain you're dealing with is crushing. The memory issues. Honestly, he probably couldn't remember the words to his own songs.
That's right.
And in the community, we were immediately talking about like, we don't even know how he's up there performing at all. And there were a lot of questions I saw circulating on social media and in media articles that were asking the question, well, if he's really sick, why would he have gone on this tour in the first place? And I think what people don't understand about Lyme disease is when, number one, my guess would be he probably didn't even have a diagnosis when he started the tour. They just knew something was off or they thought it was exhaustion. Number two, when you do get Lyme and you get a diagnosis, because it's not recognizable, no one is sitting you down and saying, hey, maybe you need to rest, or maybe you need to take a step back, or maybe you need to put yourself first, right? They're saying, oh, thank God it's quote unquote just Lyme, and push through it. And in reality, you get worse, like he did. So I hope he's getting proper treatment and I hope he's doing okay.
You mentioned working at New York Fashion Week just recently, and congratulations on that. Can you tell me about that experience?
Yeah, I am very passionate, about my tick-borne disease work. I think for me, it spans my personal life, my professional life, and I don't know if you'd call it, my philanthropic life or my volunteer work. But I'm lucky enough to serve as chair of the board for a national 501c3 called Project Lyme. And what they do is they raise money for research, for education and advocacy, because Lyme disease, unfortunately, is one of the most underfunded diseases publicly by the government. So there's a lot of gaps, and that's why, there is no cure and there is no set treatment protocol and the diagnostics aren't accurate and so on and so forth. So there's a couple of organizations, large organizations that do this work. And each year there's a production company called Runway 7 that produces a lot of the New York Fashion Week shows. And they have a cause partner each year, and they donate a fashion show to that cause. And then 100% of the ticket sales from the show go to those 501c3 partners. So last year, the cause was MS. This year, the cause was Lyme disease.
Amazing.
I was shocked when I got that call saying, would you like to be one of these 3 organizations that's involved in the show? And it's an official New York Fashion Week show. And what we did was we chose 25 advocates and celebrities, and we brought them together to walk the runway at this fashion show at New York Fashion Week. And they each got paired with a designer who designed a custom lab jacket for them to wear down the runway. And all 25 lab coats that were worn by these models told essentially like the story that a Lyme patient goes through from the start of their journey to the end. So it was a very beautiful, very emotional moment.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are these lab coats going to be available to doctors?
You're not the first person that's asked that, which now makes me think about, how could that happen? But no, fortunately or unfortunately, they were custom one-off jackets. And it was really neat because they actually let the advocates and celebrities keep them and take them home, as like a special memento. So
you were diagnosed with this disease. And is that when you threw your life's blueprint out the window and decided to change gears? What happened there?
Yeah, I think, everybody that I talk to, it seems like their plan for life at some point or another gets thrown out the window. And once again, it's like you think it's only you that it happens to. Mm-hmm. And in reality, I think that's everybody. And, I thought that I was going to be a celebrity publicist living a very fast-paced life. And, at that point, it's like I knew enough to eat organic food, and that was probably it. Like I wasn't too concerned with health or with wellness, or like I was healthy, but it wasn't something I was super cognizant of or that ever really crossed my mind. And then when I got really sick and I had to stop working for 2 years and I became the consumer of something that no one ever thinks they will, right? The healthcare system. I saw the gaps in the system. I saw the gaps, specifically in how patients are spoken to and how they're marketed to. If I saw one more billboard or advertisement that said, I won't let my disease win, I was going to lose my mind because it's not a choice, right? You read something like that and you're like, well, it's not really my choice whether the disease wins. And somehow when I started to get better, because I really thought I'd never get better, I realized that I had the PR skills to help fill that gap for people and provide resources for patients, and in a way that helped to build, a clinician's practice or a clinician into a thought leader, or, position a brand to have a favorable public image, so on and so forth. So that's what I very slowly did. Was I, in my now second life, as I like to say, I'm a healthcare publicist. And I wouldn't wish, Lyme disease or chronic disease on my worst enemy, but I do feel like it brought me to where I was meant to end up.
We also discussed off camera the idea of leadership through empathy. Can you talk about what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think, we've all had experiences in our career that have made us realize what we want to be and what we don't want to be in a leader and in a coworker, and in some instances in a boss, of a team, or in the leader of a team. And I have pulled a lot from my lived experiences, both in PR and in the agency world, where maybe I wasn't treated so well and there was a massive lack of empathy around what I was going through with my health. When I was going through the beginning of my health journey, and I thought I had thyroid cancer because my thyroid specialist had told me this is what you have. This is what we think you have, and we're going to confirm this via biopsy. So I went through it was weeks thinking I had thyroid cancer between then getting the biopsy scheduled, waiting for the results, yada, yada, yada. And I knew that I was going to have to take a step back from work. And I was trying to get a hold of some publicists that I did a lot of work with to let them know that I was going to have to take a step back. And we kept missing each other via phone. This went on for days. And one of them called me and left me a message and said something to the effect of, if you're calling to tell us that you're going to go work with a competitor, that's fine. You can just let us know via text, or it was something like that. And why somebody would jump to that conclusion, I have no idea. But I called her back and I just said that, that's not the case. I think I have thyroid cancer and I think I need to stop working. And she was like, oh my God, I never would have guessed that. But that's the thing. Nobody would ever guess that, right? Because we typically don't share what we're going through in our personal lives or in these very personal health journeys until we have an answer, because it's so emotional for us. We don't want to talk about it with everybody. And I think that goes back to leading with empathy, right? If you have a team member that all of a sudden is missing deadlines, or is rescheduling calls or missing meetings, give them grace and be gracious and empathetic to them. And instead of getting upset or chastising them, and I've been through this with my own team, I go to them first privately and I just say, hey, I've noticed this, what's going on? How can I better support you? What do you need from me? It's okay if you need to take a step back. I think we forget that we're all human. We're all human with stuff going on in the background and stuff going on in our private life. And you might not know about it. So that empathy piece, I think, is just, it's key to a lot of things.
It's huge.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
You call it your second life, and it makes me think of this previous podcast episode I did with Amanda Salas, who was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer. And she said that the version of herself pre-cancer no longer exists.
Yes.
Is that how you feel with Lyme disease as well?
Yes, absolutely. I think she might have actually spoken about this too, but when you go through a health adversity, I think, let alone one that you almost lose your life to, right? It puts things into perspective very quickly. And I think at a young age, it forces you to realize what really matters and what is really important. And also to really appreciate every little thing and every little experience, even though some of them may feel very mundane, because for a while you lost the ability to do those things. And I think that was my exact experience. Was I'm grateful for the perspective that I now have, because it's very different than it was before. So
what do you think this experience could teach other women who maybe could use what they're passionate about and make it their career, or something that happens to them and then they can use that as fuel to start a business or do something with it?
I hope it shows that you can marry your passion and your purpose with your career. It is very doable, and I hope that my path shows that you do not have to take, a straight and narrow path like it seems, on the outside that most people have, and in reality, internally, rarely anyone's is, and still live like a great, very fulfilling, very successful life. And, I think that adversity, it builds resilience. And, we always talk about the best qualities in a business leader, and it's always confidence or the fact that they're a visionary or their leadership skills. And what I never hear people say is resilience. And to start, whether you want to start a business, whether you are climbing a corporate ladder, whether you are a journalist that's just starting in the field, which I know is not easy, you have to have a very high level of resilience to continue to get knocked back down and get back up and do it again. Like, you've got to be a little bit crazy. But the resilience really comes in there, and it keeps you going naturally.
You also were named Nashville's 40 under 40 from the Nashville Business Journal. Congratulations on that as well. What did it feel like getting that recognition?
It was kind of unbelievable. There are so many amazing humans out there doing so many like big, amazing things, that I kind of couldn't believe it. I cried when I got the email, which is so embarrassing.
No.
But I was really grateful, because I think it shows that whether you're chronically ill or have an invisible illness or an invisible, disability, that your story matters and your journey matters and your contributions to society matter. So it was very, very, very special.
What does your day-to-day look like now then?
Every day is different.
Yeah.
Every day is different. On weeks where I'm feeling good, I think my days probably look like most people's. I'm lucky enough to work from home, so I can fit in all of my health related things that I need to do. And I have like a very firm morning routine that I feel like really sets the tone for my entire day. And that's my time for like ideation and my best like thinking time. And then at night, once I'm done with my work, I have a big urban garden and I go work in my garden, and that's kind of my bookmark to end the day, and wind down. But, truly some days I am on Zoom meetings all day with clients and with press, or with my team. Or there are some days, and these are my favorite days, we do a lot of work in the podcast PR space.
Mm-hmm.
And I love when I get to travel with a client to set. I just think there's no better feeling than seeing them live their purpose. And I think podcasts are such a great accessible resource for people. So yeah, it totally depends.
When you were mentioning the ideas of success, and we talk about the definitions of success,
Mm-hmm.
you had mentioned off camera that a lot of people think of success this way, but
Mm-hmm.
they leave out the whole idea of adaptability.
Yes.
And can you talk about that and how maybe not having a 5-year plan and being adaptable is the way to
Mm-hmm.
go?
Yeah, I think there's two things here. The first is we have these 5-year plans, right? We have these blueprints for our lives. And then when something happens, which it will, and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? So whether it's something that happens, or you maybe feel called to go in a different direction, or maybe your job isn't resonating with you anymore. It's very jarring when that happens and you feel like, oh my gosh, this was always my path. And now my path might look a little bit different. And I think being able to be a little bit looser around that, for me
Yeah.
at least, has been good. And to focus more on, like, the second piece of this for me is focusing more on the feeling of how do I want to feel every day. And it sounds really cheesy, but what I've realized is I just want to feel joy. How every day, how do I get closer to feeling joy and feeling joyful? And that's the feeling that I follow, is what do I feel good doing? And ultimately for me, like, kind of throwing out my blueprint and throwing out my 5-year plan and just being able to say, this is how I want to feel. This is how I want to impact people's lives. And this is kind of a loose image in my head of how I would like my life to look a year from now. I don't have all the answers. I don't know how to fill in all the gaps, but when I get to that point, 12 months later, and I look back, I feel like it ends up being better than I could have imagined because I wasn't so rigid and because I was just open to, opportunity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we also have a lot of listeners that are journalists that go the standard journalism route and then they turn to PR.
Yeah.
A lot of people go from news to PR. For those that are thinking and getting that little bit of that sensation to make that jump or to leave the news business and go the PR route, what would you say to those people that are thinking about doing something completely different?
If you feel called to do it, I think there's a reason. So that's number one, is you're not crazy for thinking that. And number two, just from lived experience, on my team at Moresco PR, we have 2 publicists that come from journalism, and they are killer at what they do because they understand what the media is looking for from a different perspective than we can, right? Because we've never been there. And I can only imagine how crazy your inbox is, right? With pitches and ideas and all of the things. And who better than somebody who has been in those shoes to be able to put their lived experience hat on and marry that with PR skills, which I think actually are very similar to journalism skills or media skills. That is like a powerhouse combo. So don't doubt yourself if you're thinking it.
Yeah, so let's unpack that a little bit further. For those that are going to make that jump into PR, what are some of the skills you notice that do transfer from journalism into PR?
I think, or at least what I have noticed, is having the ability to analyze what type of pitches got through to you and why, and being able to take that past experience and adapt it into your own ability to pitch. So I'm a firm believer in anyone can learn how to write a pitch, right? But not everyone can do it well. And I think that journalists have the ability to write really phenomenal pitches, and they also have the skills then to work with, if it's a journalist turned publicist, as the publicist, you have the skills then to work hand in hand with that journalist, with that producer, with that talent booker, because you have the inside knowledge as to what they're really looking for and what maybe you can give them that's unique or a different angle. And the storytelling, being a publicist, there's a lot of storytelling involved, and who better to do that than a journalist? Truly.
I know a lot of journalists also feel behind because they're competing with people who started in PR for these jobs. What should they maybe highlight on their resume that can make them stand out when they are going for that PR job?
So it's funny that they feel like they're behind, because I actually, or personally, when I'm hiring at Moresco PR, I will actually bring journalist or producer-based resumes to the top of my stack because I recognize how valuable that is and how valuable a different perspective is. Because it's something that lived experience can't be taught, right? So number one, don't doubt yourself. Know that you are highly sought after. But number two, if you're really looking for some concrete skills, I would say being able to demonstrate a wide variety of media relationships is very valuable. Earned media, organic media for PR firms has gotten more challenging than ever to place. So firms are often looking for individuals or consultants or contractors that can help to fill that gap. And I would also say, your ability to craft a story is very, very valuable to clients and to PR firms, and be able to communicate your client's perspectives and your client's mission and your client's brand effectively.
That imposter syndrome, Allie, that imposter
syndrome.
It made me think of also, are there any programs or classes or certifications that journalism majors, people working in journalism, should maybe consider taking, learning, doing before they hit the PR hunt or while they're pursuing the PR job?
Yeah. So for resources, these are a little bit non-traditional probably, but I love PR Daily. They have some great certification courses. They have a great newsletter. I also really like a website called the PR Net. It's membership based for publicists, but they're so smart because what they do is they will go to publicists with different expertises, and they will ask them to provide articles and write articles, based off of their real world experience, to continue to educate their members. So yeah, love PRNet.
How do you find that AI is changing the PR landscape, or is it?
Yeah, so I think for PR, we're just at the beginning of it. I know that there are some AI platforms that apparently will write pitches for you. I tried them when they came out just out of curiosity more than anything else, and they were not very human, which I do not like. I think for communications as a whole, because my firm, we do social media, we do a lot of content creation, and it's staggering to me the difference between human created content or human created captions or blog posts or website content, and AI generated content. With ChatGPT, you can tell the difference. And I really think that that's going to have a negative impact for people that are using it. It's going to make humanization so much more important, I think, in PR strategies, and especially as people are building their personal brands.
Yeah. Before we let you go, I wanted to talk about resiliency through reinvention. And what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So I think that there is something really powerful and very strong about being able to say, my life doesn't look like what I thought it would. Or, if you're like me and you had to say, I have these newfound health challenges and these newfound limitations that I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life. What is my life going to look like now? What do I want it to look like? And being able to reinvent yourself, not just externally. I think actually that's less important, but being able to reinvent yourself, in your own head, and being able to come to terms with throwing out the blueprint and throwing out the 5-year plan and all of these things you are forced to do. And I don't think there's anything more resilient than that, is being able to adapt. So.
And what if, Allie, what you called limitations was your superpower?
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases it is. And I think we tend, at least internally to ourselves, we are our own biggest critics. And, me, for example, I could take my chronic disease, my Lyme disease, and my limitations and say, wow, that's really a negative. I am less than. Or I can take them and say, wow, I have this lived experience, and this gives me insights into something that, not that nobody else has, right? Because another patient also has it. But for me, coupled with that PR skills, I was able to say, I can marry the two and actually put myself on top and make myself of higher value, in my industry. So there's always a way to think differently about it. It might take a little while to get there, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick fire time. You ready?
Yay. Yes, I'm ready.
If I weren't a publicist, I would be blank.
An author.
An author, really? Are you going to write a book? You have to write a book.
We'll see. Maybe I'll get there.
You're like, if I have the motivation.
Right now I have like a chicken scratch running note actually on hopefully what maybe someday will be a book on lessons in resilience. So we'll see. Like, put it into the universe for me.
Yeah, I'm putting it into the universe. Speaking of which, you do have another podcast with someone I follow, Revealing Soul.
Yes.
I love her. And you have that podcast, Slightly Spiritual. What has that podcast taught you really quickly?
That podcast I feel like I learned something new every episode, every guest we have on. But mostly, Slightly Spiritual, it's a passion project that somehow got popular. I have no idea how. It has taught me that I am not crazy for tuning into my gut first and knowing that my intuition is never off. And I think for a lot of us, that's our superpower. But because we don't have physical proof, we're like, oh no, and we write it off. But don't write off your intuition. That's what I've learned.
Well, I'm putting out in the universe and manifesting that I'm going to have Cindy on this podcast at some point because I find all of that so fascinating. And I think it would actually work on this podcast in talking about purpose and manifestation and reaching our dreams and our goals and everything. So
absolutely.
I'm putting that in the universe for you to figure out for me.
I'll make it happen in 5 minutes after we get off this. So,
all right. Your coffee order.
A iced latte with hemp milk and a little bit of vanilla syrup.
Oh, I love how particular you are too.
I know.
It's so hard to find hemp milk though, right? Do you make yours at home?
I don't. They have it at this great coffee shop around the corner from my house. I've gotten very spoiled.
Lucky you.
Yes.
Your favorite travel destination?
Park City or Sicily. One of the two.
How crazy that I brought up Park City, having no idea that you had such
really funny.
A special place to that.
It's the universe.
It is. Something people often get wrong about you.
I think, I'm very quiet and very shy, actually. And I think people can take that as that I'm like very guarded. And in reality, I just have sometimes like crippling social anxiety. So
it's interesting though, because that comes up time and time and time again on the podcast.
Yeah.
But it's like, sometimes it's not that you're even shy, in that you're more thoughtful in the way that you're giving responses. Like, you're actually more thoughtful in thinking through what you're going to say than just blurting anything out too.
Yes, you're absolutely right. There's so many reasons, like in the back of your head when you're trying to think through it.
Right. The last movie, TV show, or book you watched and loved?
Oh gosh. Well, I did just finish Hunting Wives on Netflix.
How is that?
It was a good, cheesy, kind of raunchy watch, like if you just need something mindless.
A snapshot of an ordinary everyday moment that gives you true joy.
One of my favorite moments of my day is every single day I get up and I go downstairs and I make myself a cappuccino, and I sit on my couch with my 2 standard poodles. And they sit like they just want to be in my lap. They're so sweet. They think they're lap dogs, even though one is 65 pounds. And I'm so grateful for that quiet time. in the morning, and I love having my coffee, and I love sitting with my dogs, and just having that space and that time to kind of think, and just be able to sit with myself.
That time is so important, right?
Mm-hmm. It really is. It really is.
If you could switch lives with one person for a day, who would it be?
Ina Garten.
I love her so much.
I just think that would be such a ball. Like, could you imagine being in Ina's kitchen?
Can you imagine living in the Hamptons and having her garden, which you said you like to garden, right?
I do. Yes, I have. We're like downtown Nashville, so we have a front yard, and every inch of that yard is packed with plants. So if I had Ina's sprawling Hamptons estate, I mean, you'd have to have like an intervention with me.
Along with her frittata and her classic martini and what else?
Her picture of cosmos.
Yes. Like, I don't know. Maybe I just want to be friends with Ina Garten. I don't know if I want to switch lives with her. Like, please, Ina, invite me over.
I'll switch lives with her and then I'll invite you over.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for manifesting that too for me. One thing you're deeply grateful for right now?
So many things, but honestly, just like my life, I'm very, very grateful to be mostly well and to be able to just enjoy time, with my husband and my dogs and my family, and have the energy to give back to my community. And I really am just endlessly grateful for it.
Last question. If you could go back in time to when you first started your career, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Once again, it goes back to, I think, the imposter syndrome and the confidence. But I think I would tell myself that I know more than I think I do. I think there's a lot of self-doubt early on in your career. And I think in whether it's PR or media or journalism, in reality, when you're young, you have an edge because you are naturally tapped into the trends. You're naturally tapped into the social platforms and to what is popular, I think, in a different way. And I would just let myself know you've got a little bit more of an edge than you think you do.
Yeah, and you don't have the obligations you have later in life, so take advantage of that now.
Do it all.
If I knew, even just like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even like how much time I had.
Yes.
Wow. Yes. You can get so much done, guys. I promise you. Go for it. Do it all.
So much.
Allie, this was so fun. Where can people find you, follow you, talk all things Lyme disease with you? Tell me all the things.
Yeah. So feel free to connect with me on Instagram. It's Allie T. Moresco. And if you have any questions about Lyme disease, I'm here to be a resource. If you have any questions about modern PR, here to be a resource. DM me anytime. And I also have my PR website, amorescopr.com. We have a lot of free resources on there, whether you're a journalist or a publicist or somewhere in between. Hopefully that will be valuable for you.
And listen to our podcast, Slightly Spiritual Podcast, right?
Yep. Slightly Spiritual is on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify. We're also on Instagram. And you can connect with us there and tune into yourself. So